All right. We are officially live, and I'm going to allow the audience a minute to jump in here. And as I do, I just wanted to welcome our two guests for today. We have, as people would recognize, Mr. Kevin O'Leary. Mr. Wonderful. Kevin, how are you? Great to see you.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. We've also got the founder and CEO of Flower Turbines, Dr. Daniel Farb. Daniel, how are you today?
Fine, thank you.
Fantastic. My name is Josh Amster. I'm the Senior Vice President of Fundraising at StartEngine. I'll be moderating the conversation for today. And in today's conversation, we're going to have a nice dialogue between Kevin and Daniel about flower turbines and what they're doing, their industry, and relevant topics in that world and with what's going on today. And so we will have time at the end for some questions as well. So please feel free to drop questions and comments into the chat. Our team will be collecting those and making sure that we can address as many of them to Kevin and Daniel as this goes along. So I guess first question for Daniel, if you don't mind just introducing Kevin and to the audience to Flower Turbines and what you all are up to over there.
So, very simply, I believe that Flower Turbines is the only small wind company that can turn it into a $1 trillion industry like solar. And that's based on a foundation of over 30 patents, some of which are game changers in aerodynamics and electronics. So that's quick. We'll go into that in more detail.
Absolutely. I mean, can you provide a little bit more of a summary on some of the company's products and what they do?
Right. So we have small wind turbines ranging from 1 meter high to 8 meters high. And the key brand, one of them, is what we call the Tulip. They are the first, maybe the most beautiful wind turbines you've ever seen. They're works of art that look like tulips as they rotate. And people are fascinated by them and watch them. But it's a lot more than a pretty face. We've really, I think, the best ones to solve the problem of how you make no noise go along with high efficiency. Usually the two don't go together. And there are a number of other things that we've solved. They're bird friendly, many other things. They start at low speeds, they endure high speeds. But the killer application that I believe is going to make us a huge company is what we call the bouquet effect or the cluster effect. We have granted patents on how to make this kind of turbine be placed in relationship to the wind, in relationship to each other, so that they can produce much more power for each turbine that you add to the group. So that means, for example, if you were to get 4 of our turbines, place them together correctly, that would be the same as getting 8 turbines and putting them separate. So even with 4, it doubles the amount of power that they can produce. And that's because they drive wind currents into each other, very much like you see birds in flight are kind of at this angle, or airplanes in military formation. They feed off of each other in order to create greater aerodynamic efficiency. So I believe that alone opens up all sorts of markets to us that in the past were closed to small wind because they were one at a time sales. Just like you would never go as somebody said, I'd like to put solar panels in your house. You say, okay, I'd like 1 solar panel. It's not that much. So for the first time, somebody can say that in a limited space, we can put many turbines and they're going to do one better. They're going to make each other perform better.
Fantastic. Fascinating. Well, so Kevin, over to you as a very experienced and successful investor. How do you see the renewable energy space evolving, or where it is today and where it could go in the future?
Well, this is a hell of a good story because it solves some really big pain points on wind. First, a lot of people are starting to figure out that they don't want them near their homes or communities because of the noise, the wop, 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 wop. That also confuses whales out in the ocean. There's a lot of problems with that. and also kills a lot of birds. And so that's over the last 5 years become a really big issue for the behemoth wind turbines. And some countries are saying, okay, we're going to pass on that, particularly ones out in the ocean. These sound a lot more efficient, more interesting, and basically where you've got a lot of feedback that's negative, they don't have it. And so it's a good innovation. Wind turbines are here to stay. So you're looking for innovation for sure. And particularly in states and communities and places on Earth where there's a tremendous amount of wind all the time. It's just supplemental energy. Who wouldn't want it? But clearly, if it's going to destroy wildlife, it isn't long before somebody is litigating on that. So this is a really good idea.
Thank you.
Daniel,
yeah, okay.
please go for it.
I just want to
Absolutely.
mention that we have another set of what I call disruptive innovations that we haven't put fully into effect yet. We've just started developing our own charge controllers, small ones, simple ones, with the advantage that they use almost zero background energy. A lot of the electronics associated with wind turbines use a lot of background energy. Now, the 10 patents that we have involve things like using AI to predict wind speed, involve accumulating energy from low wind speeds and then moving it into the grid when it's accumulated sufficiently, as well as controlling the cluster effect better for an even stronger effect. So this is also what we've got coming that I believe is going to enhance the cluster effect even more.
I know, Daniel, you've talked a lot recently about data centers and that being a key focus for Flower Turbines. It's an area that I know Kevin has a lot of experience in as well. Daniel, starting with you, why are data centers a key focus and of interest for Flower Turbines?
So the general market is that they're going to consume a lot of energy and they have a lot of space. So there are three ways that we can help a data center. One is by putting them around the periphery and make a huge cluster. Again, the cluster is the key here. On the roofs. And we also have a recently granted US patent on something that really nobody has figured out a way of handling or mastered, which is to take the air exhaust from wind turbines, from the data centers or other industrial properties and recycle it. Because if you place the turbine too close, then you're going to block the air coming out and it requires more electricity to pump it out. If you put it too far away, you miss it. But this is another no-brainer application whereby you can put this at the right distance and you need the right shape of turbine, which just happens to be our type of turbine, is the perfect shape for harnessing this kind of energy. So that's a really cool thing that I think people would love to be able to say, is that we're recycling some of the energy that is going into our data center. So I've done a little research, and Kevin, I see that you're investing in a data center in Alberta, and I ran the numbers on it, and we could get you, before subsidies, around a 17% to 25% per year return on investment from putting our turbines in Alberta, and it would be more like 25 to 35 when you include government subsidies. So I'd like to find out if you could be a customer.
Yeah, listen, I don't know why we wouldn't look at it. That project is 7,000 acres, a $70 billion project in 5 phases. It's massive. It's scheduled now to use stranded natural gas with turbines, but this is obviously something of great interest to the hyperscalers. If you can add efficiency like that on a clean basis, sure, we'd look at it, no question. And the guy that is running the project, Paul Palangin's the CEO of it. He'd be very interested in talking to you, so I'll make that happen.
Thank you. So, and then I think, of course, the part about the recycling of wind is usually a no-brainer because you've got constant wind coming up, and that can be even in non-windy areas. Alberta is a windy area, but there are lots of data centers around the world that aren't in windy areas, and this can be used with them too.
Yeah,
So
you're
I
right.
think we've got
The Grand Prairie municipality is very windy, both in the winter and in the summer, and so there's a constant cycle it's a very open property, obviously, when you build a data center. Not a lot of trees on it anymore, but yeah, it could be very interesting. I mean, we hadn't even thought about this because the traditional wind turbines that kill birds, can't put that in. There's just too much death and
so
destruction going on.
So that's an interesting reaction, and I have to say that one of our challenges is overcoming existing prejudices about wind turbines, or people not even thinking of what we can do for them because they've rejected it at an early stage for reasons of birds or efficiency or whatever else.
Yeah, that it actually has become a political issue. Most municipalities, when you propose something like this, like a wind turbine farm, the ratepayers don't like it, and no I mean, everything's local when you're talking about technology like this. People have to live with it. So this is a very interesting innovation, because when you get that initial reaction saying no, we're not going to do wind turbines, you come up with the tulip and say, no, this is actually quite attractive. It's art, doesn't hurt birds, you can't hear it, and then people are interested, and undoubtedly they want to see a prototype work. But if it's anything in a double-digit savings on anything is going to get a lot of attention.
Daniel, talk to us about some of the traction that Flower Turbines has experienced thus far.
So we actually got started with our real serious sales in Europe. For various reasons, it developed faster. And I think Europe in general is more keyed into energy savings than the United States. The United States and Canada have traditionally had enormous plenty, huge lands, lots of oil. And in Europe, they're a little more, I would say, attuned to what you have to do with limited resources. The other thing is we were accepted into a very well-known incubator in the Netherlands called Port XL, and they helped us get started there. So most of our installations there have not been with the cluster effect. People usually want maybe 3, 4. It's been a little slower trying to get into big corporate projects. So we've sold a lot. One of our good sellers in Europe is something that uses a combination of wind and solar. We make e-bike charging stations, and I'd say we sold 50 to 100 of them in Europe, and we are hoping to turn this into an infrastructure play. In other words, to be able to equip a whole city with these and make it possible to enable e-biking to grow. The way I compare it to is that if you're the first person to buy a fax machine, it's not worth so much. In the same way, it's kind of hard to find places to recharge your bike. Are you going to come in from the suburbs? Or are you going to, if you're in a wheelchair, you're going to take your wheelchair into the hospital on electric drive, or are you going to take one of those vans? So if you have these things all over, then it makes it more convenient for people to lock up their bike, go into a store, come out, and it's got enough of a charge to get you home or wherever else you need. So we're making a proposal actually in the next week or two to a city in Europe about using these as an infrastructure, not only for charging, but also for tourist information. So we'll see how that goes. But that could be a very good project for us. And
I want to, sorry, just to chime in 1 second, Daniel. For Kevin, I mean, given your experience, what do you think is the key to scaling an innovative energy company?
It's to get multiple sites in multiple locations because particularly for large industrial or corporate clients, it's worth it for them given how much they're going to spend to go and see it. Just fly there and it's almost like you have the way you sell aircraft. People go and see the planes and fly them all the way to Paris Air Show. It's sort of the same thing here. That's after you've said to them, we don't have the bird, whale, or noise issue. I mean, that is a deal killer in large turbine farms. It's just because nobody wants to go through the permitting process when you, for lack of, excuse my French, piss off the local people. That's just not good. No, you can't get the permit. And so, the whole thing about data centers is permits. You need water permits, you need land permits, you need construction permits, you need access to fiber on all four corners, and you need the local government and the governor of the state to approve your proposal for both the continuous energy, whether it's coming off the grid or you have your own source, and what your plan for backup power is. All of that has to go into the engineering design before it's permitted. So you're talking about spending millions before you actually even break ground. And most of these don't contemplate wind, even in Texas where there is wind, because there's just a lot of unhappy people that don't want wind farms there. They find them unsightly and disturbing. And for environmentalists, seeing a dead bird underneath one just makes them crazy. And I understand why, because you didn't have to do that to the animals. But as I say, this is worth looking at because it solves for those problems. But really, once you have one use case and it's working, then execution skills are what's left. So that's the thing about all these deals is you get a use case and it proves itself out and the savings are double digit if it's true and you can show it, it grows like a wildfire because others don't have to take the risk in implementation.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people agree with you, Kevin, that this is worth taking a look at. The company's now raised in total more than $16.6 million on StartEngine from, I can't, Daniel, maybe you know the number of investors better than I do, but a large, many
8,000.
thousands.
8,000.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, Daniel, the company's been very successful with its fundraising efforts on StartEngine. And as you continue to raise capital here and moving forward, where do you see the biggest growth opportunities for the business in the next year to 2 years?
So if we can do what Kevin just mentioned, which is to get really good use cases, and for the cluster effect, we don't have really good use cases. We've measured it very carefully, experimentally, but we haven't had really good use cases, or people haven't wanted us to come in and check the data, all these kinds of things. So I think once we have that, it's going to be in big projects. It's going to be, like I mentioned, data centers. It'll be in real estate, malls, big government buildings, airports, things like that. And there's one thing that I would like to do. Again, we don't have a use case in this yet, but I have an interested landowner who turned down a proposal from the large wind turbines to put them on his property and said is interested in getting a proposal from us as to how we can do it. Now, what would be the advantage? Aside from the no bird kills and the aesthetic issue, he's got a huge property near a resort area. And if the rule of thumb with big wind turbines is because of the aerodynamic disturbance they make, you have to locate them several hundred yards from each other. We can put ours right together so that we could get the same amount of energy, maybe at a higher cost, but the same amount of energy by making a long strip through his property that allows him the rest of the property for development. So if we can get that and or even do a smaller stage pilot with part of it there, I think that what we could do is then get into utility scale small wind, which sounds like a funny thing because we always think of it as only large wind, but there are some advantages there's also a maintenance advantage. Ours are much easier to maintain. So that's another factor that fits in there, because the long-term cost is different. And I'm sure you've also driven by wind farms, and you see that some of them are not operating a lot of the time. And there can be many reasons for it, but one of them is maintenance. By the time one of them is starting to break down, you have to take out a month, basically, to call the people in to come and service it, maybe replace the gears, and then get it moving again. So this is another potential huge growth area. We have to take some baby steps, I think, maybe to get there. But this is what I see as our really big vision, is large scale, small wind.
Great. I want to make sure that we can tune in the audience a little bit here and address some of the questions that are coming in, because we do have a lot of questions here. The first one is, I would assume for Daniel, but what's the potential for using your technology in power farms in open areas right now, such as those around Las Vegas?
So Las Vegas in general has low wind. There are some areas near canyons in Las Vegas where the wind is very good. So it depends where. You know, we try to discourage people if they have wind, let's say, 5 miles an hour or something like that. Even though our turbines can pick up that, it's a very small amount. And even with the cluster effect will make it bigger, but you need a really big cluster to make it cost effective for the low amounts of wind. So we can't do it everywhere. So it would depend where specifically in the Las Vegas area you are. And by the way, with our models is that it attracts attention, and it can be used for advertising, which is also very valuable. But in terms of how much electricity it's producing, we really do need a good resource. Just like you wouldn't put a solar panel in a cave and expect a good return, you shouldn't put a wind turbine in an area where there's not much wind and expect it to do well.
Great. And then, Daniel, I know before we started this, you mentioned wanting to maybe have a discussion around some of the tariffs. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity to chat about that and
Sure.
get Kevin's thoughts as well.
Sure. I was actually watching Kevin on whatever it was, some YouTube or other channel, Fox News maybe, today, talking about tariffs. And I'll tell you how they impact us directly. Right now, we're trying to also fundraise and starting to target Canada, because Canada is a very windy area. They have a very developed ecological consciousness. And we're actually in talks for a joint venture in Canada with a very big company. And we've been calling some of the people who haven't completed investment or a purchase in Canada. And 80% of the time, according to our staff, they say, we won't have anything to do with an American company, et cetera, et cetera. So I was listening to Kevin's remarks today about how there's politics involved, but what we're finding is it's reaching the average person as well. So I was wondering what your answer would be if somebody says we're angry at the United States, get rid of Trump, et cetera, and how we would do that, because I think it's an important market for us.
Well, you're not the first person. I have a broad portfolio of companies on both sides of the border. In fact, I was born in Montreal as a Canadian. My family's all American because we moved to the U.S. and had our kids there. So they're American, they're Irish, and they're Canadian. So it's a really interesting mix. I feel I'm in a unique position to kind of know what's going on both sides of the border. So in the case of Canada, this is a very unique period. It's Canada over the last decade has had complete economic collapse. In fact, 25% of the population now live below the poverty line. It was a series of mistakes of policy under a prime minister called Justin Trudeau, who turned out not to have very good executional skills. So he eventually got thrown out of his own party, and they brought in the ex-Bank of England Canadian. His name is Mark Carney. At the same time this was happening, this is only a few weeks ago, Trump has a toxic relationship with Trudeau and a minister called Freeland, who was the finance minister. They literally hated each other. And Trudeau is having, meetings with Trump down in Mar-a-Lago and just remained toxic. So Trump came up with this idea of calling him the governor of Canada, and poking fun at him and driving him absolutely crazy. And he was enjoying doing it. And he came up with the idea, as the bombastic nature he has, of buying the Canadian country and making it the 51st state. Now, you can imagine that was great political fodder for Carney, because Carney's problem prior to Trump, and I'm giving you the full explanation, which is going to be a good answer for you when you understand the dynamics here. The election is just weeks away. It's the 28th of April. So what Carney found was he was trailing by 30%, because people knew his party and the people that are still in the cabinets, parliamentary system, it's like the British system. You put these people in place to run mandates. They all failed, and they're still there. So he was having a really hard time explaining why it's going to get better when now 25% of the population lives in poverty. But all of a sudden, Trump becomes a shiny bead for him. He goes out and he says, look, only I can defend you against the evil Trump. And every day he spent millions of dollars on television saying, don't look at my party's results. Don't talk about the past 10 years. Focus on the evil taskmaster, and I will defend you. And his poll results went right up to parity and then passed the competition, a conservative guy named Pierre Poilievre. So what's happening today and yesterday, when Trump is now signaling an EU deal, a deal with 58 countries, all at a baseline of 10%. Of course, he separated China. That's a different conversation. Has really hurt Carney in the last 48 hours, because he no longer has the evil Trump, because everybody's in a negotiation to get to a place where Europe, Eastern Europe, Mexico, and Canada are all part of an economic union with maybe zero tariffs. That's the signal coming out of the White House. I don't know if you just saw the live cabinet meeting. This is getting really interesting. And so that's why the market has been all over the place trying to determine day to day. The reason I'm bringing this up is after we get past the 28th, which whoever wins, that prime minister is going to fly down to Washington and start negotiating NAFTA 3. And all this hate Trump rhetoric goes away because there's no political motivation to do that. And of course, the United States buys 75% of Canadian output, and 28 states say Canada is their number one export in terms of their goods and services. So this is a marriage that's been around for over 100 years, and it is having a tiff. It's a little bit of a dating, problem, and it's going to come right back in line after the election. So you're not going to have this problem in May and June. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think it's a toss-up of who wins. I have a feeling Carney will lose, because ultimately the weight of his poor performance for the last decade is on the minds of all those people that have, if you think about this, the average Canadian has lost 41% of their net worth in Canadian dollars. They're pretty pissed. And that's part of all of this stuff you're worried about. That partnership you're talking about will get resolved May, June, July time frame, I think.
So we should hang tight.
Yeah, because you're right. The reason it'll happen is good economic sense. And yes, Canada has a lot of wind. So, and this solves for a lot of problems of other wind farms. Canadians don't want dead birds. They're very concerned about their, environment, and they don't like this stuff. And wind farms have had a bad rap. So if you're solving for that problem, it's a big deal. That should be the headliner about the whole deal. It's just a better way of doing wind without all the downside.
Yeah. Well, great. This has been fantastic. Kevin, really appreciate all of your time and thoughts and information about what's going on and the latest. And Dr. Farb as well, thank you for your time and educating all of us more about Flower Turbines and what's going on there. You can see at the bottom here, we've got a link that goes directly to Flower Turbines campaign page, startengine.com/offering/Flower Turbines. Please feel free to visit that link to learn more about the business, the opportunity, and what's going on here. But gentlemen, thank you both so much again. And I hope you both have a tremendous rest of your day.
Thank you.
Can I
Nice
just say
meeting you.
one
Okay.
thing?
Yeah.
I just like to say I appreciate the role that StartEngines has played in helping me develop and get to where I am now.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you,
that's
Daniel.
a great
Appreciate it.
endorsement. That's a great endorsement. And I'm a shareholder and a paid spokesperson because I really believe in this format. This is the next wave of how venture capital is democratizing, for everybody. I think it's fantastic. It's great. I've had many companies involved in it. And I think your story is easy to understand. I think you'll do well on this platform. Let's see what happens.
Fantastic. Thank you guys
Okay.
both. And like I said, have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care.
Great. Bye-bye.